When I bought my house in the Oak Ridge Estates community, I expected a peaceful life. A quiet neighborhood, a nice backyard, and a garage big enough for my truck. What I didn't expect was Karen Whitaker, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA. Karen was middle-aged, blonde, and full of righteous fury. She was the kind of person who treated every minor inconvenience as a personal attack. If a trash can was left out 2 minutes past pickup, she'd issue a fine. If kids laughed too loudly on the sidewalk, she'd call it public disturbance. And, unfortunately, I was her new target. It started with a friendly warning. Karen knocked on my door one evening, wearing her signature HOA name tag and a clipboard clutched to her chest. "Hello, Mr. Last Name." "Yeah?" I said, already knowing this wasn't going to be good. "I wanted to discuss a few concerns about your property." She flipped through her ridiculously thick binder of HOA rules. "First, your mailbox is half an inch too tall based on community guidelines. Please correct it immediately." I blinked. "Half an inch?" "Yes," she said, completely serious. "And that's not all. Your lawn is not properly edged, and your truck, well, HOA policy states that personal vehicles should be parked in the garage, not the driveway." I looked at my perfectly fine lawn. My perfectly legal truck. Then I looked at her. "Karen, my truck is too big for my garage. That rule is ridiculous." She sniffed. "Rules exist for a reason. Please comply, or I'll have to issue formal violations." Then she walked away. I didn't comply. The next week, I got my first official HOA violation notice, $100 fine for improper vehicle storage. Then another, $75 for failure to maintain lawn edging. Then another, $50 for unsightly garbage bins. Karen was escalating. And then, one day, I got a certified letter in the mail. Notice of legal action. Dear Mr. Last Name, due to multiple violations of HOA policy, the Oak Ridge Estates HOA has filed for legal action to have you removed from the community for failure to comply with community standards. I stared at the letter, dumbfounded. Karen was actually trying to evict me. This had gone too far. It was time to fight back. While I was dealing with Karen's nonsense, I happened to overhear a conversation at the local bank. I was waiting in line when I heard an angry voice at the counter. "This is ridiculous. I've been a customer here for years." I turned. It was Karen. She was arguing with a bank manager. "I just need a little more time," she hissed. "I'll make the next payment." My eyes narrowed. Karen was behind on her mortgage. I leaned in, listening. "I understand, ma'am," the bank manager said, "but if the payments aren't made soon, the note will be sold to a private lender." A thought clicked into place. Karen was trying to kick me out of the neighborhood. But what if I bought her mortgage instead? I did some digging. Turns out, Karen's house was severely delinquent on payments. The bank was desperate to offload the mortgage note. So, I made a quiet offer. A few weeks later, I got confirmation. I was now the legal owner of Karen's mortgage, which meant I technically owned her house. And she had no idea. The very next day, Karen showed up at my door again. This time, she had a lawyer with her. "Mr. Last Name, I'm here to formally inform you that the HOA has approved your eviction. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." I smiled. "Funny," I said, because I was just about to tell you the same thing. Karen frowned. "Excuse me?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out her mortgage documents. "Karen, I own the note on your house now. Which means, if you don't start making payments to me, you'll be the one getting evicted." Her jaw dropped. That's impossible," she sputtered. "Nope," I said. "Your mortgage was delinquent. I bought it. And now, you owe me." Her face went white. You can't do this." "Oh, but I can," I said. "In fact, I can start foreclosure proceedings right now." Her lawyer turned to her, whispering frantically. Karen looked like she was about to faint. The next morning, Karen showed up at my house again. But this time, she wasn't here to threaten me. She was here to beg. "Please," she said, voice shaking. "You can't evict me. This is my home." I leaned against my door frame, arms crossed. "Oh, you mean the way you tried to evict me?" She swallowed hard. That was a mistake. I smirked. Yeah, it was. She hesitated. What do you want? She whispered. I thought about it. Then I pulled out a contract. Asterisk, here's the deal, Karen. If you want to stay in your house, you're going to do 3 things. Drop every single violation you filed against me. Resign from the HOA, permanently. Never, ever bother me again. Asterisk. Karen stared at the paper. Her hands shook as she signed it. Karen stepped down from the HOA the very next day. She never spoke to me again. A few months later, I heard she quietly sold her house and moved away. And Oak Ridge Estates? It thrived without her. No more petty violations. No more HOA tyranny. No more Karen. And as for me? I kept her mortgage just long enough to enjoy the victory. Then I sold the note back to the bank. Because at the end of the day, I didn't want to own her house. I just wanted to own her fate. With Karen gone for good, the neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief. The HOA, now under new leadership, finally relaxed. No more ridiculous fines. No more petty control tactics. No more Karen lurking around with a clipboard. For the first time since I moved in, I could actually enjoy my home without the constant threat of some fabricated violation. But if I had learned anything from dealing with Karen, it was that people like her never truly go away. About 3 months later, I found an unmarked envelope in my mailbox. No HOA logo. No return address. Just a single word printed on the front in bold capital letters. Revenge. My stomach tightened. I ripped open the envelope. Inside was a typed letter. You may have won this round, but I am far from finished. Enjoy your little victory while it lasts. You took my home from me, and I will make sure you regret it. Watch your back. 'Kay? I froze. Karen. She wasn't just gone, she was plotting. At first, I figured the letter was just empty bluster. Karen was a sore loser, of course, she'd try to scare me. But then, strange things started happening. My mailbox was knocked over twice. I received a sudden inspection notice from the city for suspected code violations. A false noise complaint was filed against me by an anonymous neighbor. And then, the worst incident happened. I woke up one morning to find a for sale sign in my front yard. A fake one. Somehow, someone had planted it overnight with a phone number that led to a disconnected voicemail. It was a clear message. Karen was still trying to mess with me. I knew Karen wouldn't stop unless I made her. So, I called in a favor. My brother, being the town sheriff, had plenty of contacts. I told him about the letter, the false complaints, and the suspicious activity around my house. I need proof, man, I told him. I know it's Karen, but I need something solid. He nodded. I might know a guy. A few days later, I got a call from a private investigator named Mark Holloway. I hear you've got a former HOA dictator making your life hell, he said with a chuckle. You heard right, I said. Think you can track her down? Consider it done. A week later, Mark called me back. And what he told me, it was worse than I thought. Your girl, Karen? She's back in town. I sat up straight. What? Yep, Mark said. She's been renting a house in the next neighborhood over. Quietly, of course, no HOA power there. But she's been watching your place. A chill ran down my spine. That's not all, Mark continued. She's been talking to someone on the HOA board. A guy named Greg Dawson. Greg, one of Karen's old allies. He had kept his head down after she left, but I knew he was just as bad as she was. And now he was helping her. I decided to pay Greg a visit. The next HOA meeting, I showed up early, waiting for him outside the clubhouse. When he arrived, he looked surprised to see me. Oh, hey, he said, forcing a smile. I didn't waste time. I know you've been talking to Karen. His face twitched. What? That's ridiculous. Cut the crap, I said. I know she's back. I know you've been helping her. What I don't know is why you'd risk your position for someone who already lost. Greg shifted uncomfortably. She wanted a second chance, man. She said she wanted to fix things. I laughed bitterly. Fix things? Or get revenge? Greg swallowed hard. Look, She said she was just going to file a couple of complaints, make things difficult for you. I told her to keep it quiet. Well, guess what? I said. She didn't keep it quiet. She's been harassing me again. That's illegal, Greg. His face paled. Illegal? Oh yeah, I nodded. Stalking, filing false complaints, property damage, hell, I could have her arrested. Greg panicked. I didn't know she was doing all that. Then prove it, I said. Cut her off. Tell me where she's staying. If you don't, I'm going straight to the sheriff's office and naming you as her accomplice. He hesitated. Then, finally, he caved. She's renting a place on Maplewood Drive, he admitted. I smirked. Good boy. With Karen's location confirmed, I handed everything over to my brother. The threatening letter. The false complaints. The PI's report confirming she was back. And then, my brother paid her a visit. Karen denied everything. She tried to act innocent, saying it was all a misunderstanding. But when my brother showed her the evidence, she folded. Instead of risking arrest, she agreed to sign a legal order stating she would never interfere with me or the HOA again. And 2 weeks later, she was gone. For real this time. No dramatic threats. No comeback schemes. Just gone. With Karen finally out of my life, I could truly enjoy my home. No fake violations. No stalking. No petty revenge schemes. Just peace. And as I sat on my porch, sipping a beer, my brother pulled up. So, he said, grinning. Think she'll try to come back again? I smiled. No. This time, she's really gone. We clinked our bottles together. Brookhaven was finally free. And Karen? She learned the hard way that messing with me always ends the same way. She loses. For a year, life in Brookhaven was perfectly peaceful. No Karen. No ridiculous HOA violations. No constant battles over nonsense. But just when I thought I'd seen the last of her, Karen came back. I was walking my dog one evening when I noticed a moving truck parked 2 streets over. At first, I didn't think much of it. But then I saw the real estate sign in front of the house. Sold. New owner. K. Whitaker. I stopped cold. Karen Whitaker. My stomach dropped. No way. I immediately called Linda. Tell me I'm hallucinating. Linda sighed heavily. You're not, she said. Karen just bought a new house, technically outside the HOA's jurisdiction. You've got to be kidding me. Nope. And guess what? What? She's already trying to start a new HOA. I felt my blood pressure spike. Karen wasn't just back. She was rebuilding her empire. For the first few months, Karen kept a low profile. No violations. No confrontations. No obvious signs of war. But then, flyers started appearing in mailboxes. New community association forming. Join the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Advisory Committee. Let's work together to maintain order, beauty, and high standards in our neighborhood. Translation? Karen was trying to start a new HOA. I decided to pay Karen a visit. I walked over to her new house, knocked on the door, and waited. When she answered, she smirked. Oh, she said, fake surprise dripping from her voice. I was wondering when you'd show up. Cut the act, Karen, I said. What are you trying to pull this time? She sighed dramatically. I'm just trying to restore a little class to the neighborhood. Unlike certain people, I actually care about maintaining standards. I folded my arms. Karen, you don't even live in the HOA anymore. She smiled. Not yet. I narrowed my eyes. What does that mean? She tilted her head. You'll see. I walked away, my gut telling me something big was coming. And I was right. Over the next month, Karen slowly recruited followers. She targeted old HOA loyalists, people who still believed in strict rules and endless fines. She called them the advisory board, but we all knew what it really was. A new HOA in disguise. Then, she made her boldest move yet. She filed a petition to have her new group officially recognized as a governing body over Oak Ridge Estates. If she succeeded, she'd have power again. And this time, it would be legal. I wasn't about to let that happen. So, I did what Karen never saw coming. I started my own campaign. Linda and I went door to door, warning people. Karen is trying to take control again, we said. If you sign her petition, you're giving her the power to fine you, control your property, and dictate how you live. Most people? They remembered the nightmare. They wanted nothing to do with her. But Karen? She wasn't giving up that easily. She went all in, hosting community meetings, spreading false rumors that our neighborhood was falling apart without her leadership. It was a full-blown election battle. And I had one final move to end it all. The HOA board called an official vote to determine if Karen's group would be recognized. The entire neighborhood showed up. Karen walked in smug as ever, her new advisory board following behind her like a colt. She took the podium and started her typical speech. For too long, this community has suffered from a lack of order. People leave trash bins out too long, lawns are overgrown, and property values are at risk. We need structure, rules, and leadership. I stood up. So you're saying you want to bring back your old rules? Karen smiled. I simply want what's best for everyone. I held up a folder. Well, that's interesting, because I have a list of every ridiculous rule you enforced. Like when you fined a grandmother for having too many flower pots. Or when you tried to ban basketball hoops. Or my personal favorite, when you tried to evict me for owning a truck. The room murmured. Karen's face twitched. I cut her off. You don't care about the neighborhood, Karen. You care about control. And we're not going to let you have it. Then I turned to the crowd. Who here actually wants Karen back in charge? Silence. Then, one by one, people started shaking their heads. Then, someone laughed. And just like that, Karen lost. Again, when the vote was called, Karen's proposal was rejected unanimously. Her so-called advisory board? Dismantled. Her power? Gone. Again, Karen stood there, shaking with rage. You'll regret this, she hissed. I smirked. Funny. That's what you said last time. She stormed out. And 2 weeks later, her house went up for sale. For real this time. Karen left Brookhaven for good. No final schemes. No dramatic comeback. Just gone. And the neighborhood? It thrived. As I sat on my porch, beer in hand, my brother pulled up. Think she'll ever come back? He asked. I chuckled. No. This time, we buried her for good. He raised his beer. To a Karen-free life. We clinked bottles. Brookhaven was finally free. And Karen? She learned the hard way. Messing with me always ends the same way. She loses. Karen was gone. Her house sold. Her new HOA plan failed. And Brookhaven was finally free from her nonsense. Or so I thought. Because even though Karen had left town, she still managed to leave a trail of chaos behind. About a month after Karen moved, Linda called me. You're not going to believe this. What now? I groaned. We got a letter from the county housing board, she said. They're doing an official audit on the HOA. My eyes widened. Wait, what? Why? Because of Karen, Linda sighed. Apparently, she filed multiple complaints before she left. She accused us of mismanagement, unlawful practices, and even hinted that we were stealing HOA funds. I burst out laughing. She's gone, and she's still trying to screw with us? Yep, Linda said. We have an investigator coming next week to review all our records. This wasn't just Karen being petty. This was Karen trying to burn the HOA down from afar. I decided to do some digging of my own. If Karen wanted to play dirty, I was going to expose everything she did while she was in power. So, I went through old HOA records. And what I found was shocking. Over $10,000 in miscellaneous expenses with no receipts. Unapproved fines collected from residents that were never recorded properly. Mysterious checks written to a private account, linked to Karen. Karen hadn't just been abusing her power. She had been stealing. And now? I had proof. The following week, the county housing investigator arrived. She sat down with Linda, the board, and me as we handed over all the files. So, the investigator said, flipping through the documents. You're saying the previous HOA president was embezzling funds? Linda nodded. We didn't realize it until she left, but these expenses don't match any approved budgets. I slid the copies of Karen's suspicious transactions across the table. This account here? I said. It was hers. She was literally taking HOA funds for business expenses that never existed. The investigator's eyebrows shot up. Well, she said, closing the folder. Looks like we have a case for fraud. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my brother. Hey man, thought you'd like to know. Know what? A warrant just went out for Karen's arrest. I grinned. Seriously? Yep. The housing board turned over all the evidence to the authorities. She's facing felony fraud charges. Karen had finally gone too far. And this time, she wasn't just losing power. She was going to jail. A month later, Karen was arrested in a different town. She had been hiding out, thinking she could escape consequences. But the second she tried to buy a new property under her name, the system flagged her. She was taken in for questioning and formally charged with fraud, theft, and misuse of HOA funds. And when the news broke, Brookhaven celebrated. Karen pled guilty to avoid a full trial. She was fined thousands of dollars, banned from ever joining an HOA board again, and given a suspended sentence. She wouldn't serve real time, but she was financially ruined. Her name was destroyed, and she could never harass another neighborhood again. Brookhaven thrived without her. One evening, I was sitting on my porch, beer in hand, watching the sunset. Linda walked up, smiling. So, she said, she's really gone this time. I smirked. Oh, she's more than gone. I pulled out a copy of Karen's public court records and handed them to Linda. She scanned it, then laughed. You actually printed this? Oh yeah, I grinned. Figured we should frame it in the HOA office as a warning. Linda shook her head, still laughing. To Karen, she said, raising her drink. May she never come back, I said, clinking my bottle against hers. And with that, Brookhaven's nightmare was truly over. For good. Life in Brookhaven had never been better. The HOA was actually functional. No more petty fines or ridiculous rules. People actually enjoyed living here instead of fearing a clipboard-wielding dictator. Karen was gone, her name ruined, and she would never set foot in an HOA meeting again. For the first time in years, I thought, this is it. We finally won. But then, I got an anonymous letter in the mail. And just like that, the nightmare wasn't over. The envelope was plain white, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed in a familiar font. You thought you got rid of me. You didn't. This isn't over. My blood ran cold. I reread the note 3 times, making sure I wasn't imagining it. Karen was gone. Karen was done. Or so I thought. But if this letter was real, then that meant one thing. Karen was still watching. I immediately called Linda and my brother. You're sure it was anonymous? My brother asked. No signature, no return address, nothing, I said. But it feels like Karen. Linda sighed. She's got no power left. What's she gonna do, haunt the neighborhood? That's what I need to find out, I said. Because if Karen was planning something, I needed to shut it down before it started. A few days later, I got a call from Mark Holloway, the private investigator who had helped me before. You're not gonna like this, he said. Hit me, I said. Karen's been making calls. She's trying to get back into real estate, but nobody will touch her because of her fraud charges. Good, I said. Yeah, but here's the problem, Mark continued. She's not giving up. Word is, she's looking for a way to buy property under someone else's name. I felt my stomach drop. She's trying to move back? Worse, Mark said. She's trying to start over somewhere new. I had to know exactly what she was up to. So I dug deeper. And what I found blew my mind. Karen wasn't just looking for a new house. She was looking to take over another HOA. She was trying to buy into a brand new community, one that hadn't fully formed yet. Her plan? Move in quietly. Gain influence before anyone realized who she was. Rebuild her kingdom from scratch. This wasn't about Brookhaven anymore. This was about Karen's comeback. And I wasn't about to let it happen. If Karen was trying to worm her way into another HOA, I had one shot to stop her. I contacted Mark, my brother, and Linda. We need to make sure she never gets power again, I said. How? Linda asked. Simple, I said. We expose her before she even gets started. I tracked Karen's real estate inquiries and found out she was targeting a neighborhood called Willow Creek. So, I did what Karen never expected. I went to Willow Creek's HOA meeting before she could. And I told them everything. How she had scammed Brookhaven. How she had tried to illegally evict people. How she had been arrested for fraud. Then I showed them her court records. By the time I was done speaking, the entire room was horrified. When Karen finally showed up, ready to introduce herself, the HOA president stood up and said, Karen Whitaker, you're banned from ever holding office in this HOA. Leave now. Karen's face turned bright red. She opened her mouth to argue, but then saw the entire community staring at her. She had no power. She had no allies. She had lost. Again. She stormed out of the meeting, defeated for the final time. A few weeks later, I got one last update. Karen had left the state. She was gone. No more power grabs. No more HOA schemes. No more Karen. For real this time. With Karen gone for good, life truly went back to normal. No mystery violations. No petty revenge schemes. No more chaos. Brookhaven was free. One evening, I sat on my porch, beer in hand, watching the sunset. My brother pulled up, grinning. So, he said, think she'll ever try again? I chuckled. Doesn't matter, I said. Wherever she goes, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who she is. He raised his beer. To a Karen-free life. We clinked bottles. And just like that, the reign of Karen was truly over. Forever. For 6 months, life was peaceful. No HOA drama. No anonymous threats. No clipboard-wielding tyrants trying to take over the neighborhood. Karen was gone. Or so I thought. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I debated ignoring it, but something told me to pick up. Hello? A familiar voice sent a chill down my spine. Hello, my name. Miss me? My grip tightened on the phone. Karen. What do you want, Karen? I said, my voice cold. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Oh, I just thought you should know. I'm coming back. I stood up straight. Like hell you are. Oh, but I am, she said sweetly. And this time, I've got friends. My blood ran cold. What the hell does that mean? You'll see, she whispered. Then she hung up. I immediately called my brother. She's coming back, I said. What? How? No idea, but she says she has friends. My brother sighed. All right. I'll look into it. See if she's bought property anywhere nearby. I wasn't worried about Karen. I was worried about who she was bringing with her. Because if Karen wasn't working alone this time, things were about to get much, much worse. Over the next few weeks, I kept an eye out. And then I saw them. A group of new residents moving into houses near the neighborhood entrance. Nothing weird about that, right? Except, they were all middle-aged women. They all drove luxury SUVs. And they all acted exactly like Karen. Then I saw it. One of them was wearing an HOA badge. And that's when it hit me. Karen wasn't just coming back. She was rebuilding her empire. Karen was smarter this time. Instead of trying to take over an existing HOA, she was starting fresh. She recruited like-minded people. She bought multiple properties under different names. And she planted herself in a new HOA board. Her goal? Expand. Take control. And come for Brookhaven. And this time? She wasn't alone. She had an army of Karens. I gathered my allies. Linda, my brother, and every resident who had fought Karen before. We shut her down once, I said. We'll do it again. But this wasn't just Karen anymore. This was bigger. We weren't just fighting one power-hungry dictator. We were fighting an organized HOA cult. Karen's plan moved fast. Her new HOA started trying to expand its reach, claiming it had authority over properties outside its original boundaries. She sent letters to Brookhaven homeowners, telling them they were now under new HOA guidelines. Then, she started issuing violations. even though she had zero legal power over us. I got one myself. Notice of infraction. Violation. Unapproved vehicle in driveway. Fine. $250. Issued by Greater Oak Ridge HOA. I laughed out loud. Karen was trying to find me in a neighborhood she didn't even control. It was time to end this for good. I called a lawyer. And so did half of Brookhaven. We filed a lawsuit against Karen's fake HOA expansion, arguing that she had no legal authority over Brookhaven. She was fraudulently issuing fines. She was harassing residents, again. When Karen got served with legal papers, she lost it. She showed up at a town meeting, screaming about how she was trying to restore order. But the judge didn't care. Brookhaven was officially ruled outside of her HOA's reach, and she was ordered to stop issuing fraudulent violations or face fines herself. With her lawsuit loss, Karen's new HOA started falling apart. Homeowners revolted. Her own board members turned on her. People stopped paying her HOA fees. Then, the final blow came. The state HOA commission opened an investigation into her entire operation. And guess what they found? More financial fraud, unlawful property claims, illegal HOA expansions. Karen wasn't just shut down. She was permanently banned from running an HOA ever again. Her entire fake HOA was dissolved. And Karen? She lost everything. 1 week later, Karen's house went up for sale, again. This time, she didn't just leave town. She left the state. For real. Gone. Finished. Forever. With Karen finally erased from existence, Brookhaven thrived. No drama. No dictatorship. No fake HOA takeovers. One evening, I sat on my porch, beer in hand, watching the sunset. My brother pulled up. "She's really gone this time?" he asked. I smirked. "Oh yeah, this time, it's permanent." He raised his beer. To a Karen-free world. We clinked bottles. Brookhaven was safe. And Karen? She learned one final lesson. Messing with me always ends the same way. She loses. With Karen officially gone, Brookhaven settled into the peaceful, drama-free neighborhood it was always meant to be. No more HOA corruption. No more phony violations. No more clipboard-carrying tyrants patrolling the streets. Life was finally good. I woke up every morning, stepped outside, and enjoyed the quiet. No Karen. No headaches. It felt too good to be true. And, as it turned out, it was. One morning, I found an envelope taped to my front door. Not an official HOA letter. Not a bill. Just a plain white envelope with a single word written on the front. Soon, my stomach tightened. I ripped it open, expecting another empty threat. Instead, inside was a printed screenshot of a real estate transaction. Someone had bought a house in Brookhaven. And that someone's name? Catherine W. Spencer. My heart stopped. Karen had changed her name. And she was back. Karen had learned from her past mistakes. This time, she didn't show up guns blazing with fake HOA violations and clipboard threats. She moved quietly. She bought one of the last available homes in Brookhaven under her new identity. She didn't join the HOA immediately. She didn't announce herself. She just moved in. Watching, waiting, planning. At first, nothing seemed different. No new fines. No HOA takeovers. No Karen-style power plays. But then, the whispers started. A few neighbors mentioned seeing a new woman walking the neighborhood, asking a lot of questions about the HOA rules. Someone spotted her talking to a former HOA board member. Then, anonymous complaint letters started appearing in people's mailboxes. And then, I got a notice. Notice of community discussion. A new initiative is forming to create a stronger, better Brookhaven. Join us for an informal meeting to discuss improving neighborhood standards. At the bottom, a new name. Organized by Catherine W. Spencer. I laughed out loud. Karen. Back at it again. She wasn't running this time. She was rebuilding. And if I didn't stop her now, she'd take everything back. I showed up at the community discussion. It was held at the local clubhouse, and the moment I walked in, I spotted her. Karen, or rather, Catherine Spencer, stood at the front, smiling sweetly like she wasn't a complete menace to society. The room was full. She had gathered people, and she was about to launch her campaign. "Good evening, everyone," she said, oozing fake charm. "I'm Catherine Spencer, and I'm so happy to be your new neighbor." I folded my arms, watching. As a longtime community advocate, she continued, "I believe we should work together to make Brookhaven the best it can be." She pulled out a thick folder of proposed guidelines. I already knew what they were. The same HOA rules she had before. The same power grab. The same Karen playbook. I stepped forward. Question. Karen's smile faltered as she looked at me. "Yes." I pulled out a file of my own. "Why did you buy your house under a fake name, Karen?" The room went silent. Karen's face drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about." I smirked. "Oh, you don't?" "Because I ran a public record search. And it turns out Catherine Spencer is just your new alias. But your legal documents still list you as Karen Whitaker." Gasps. Whispers. Karen stiffened. That's a mistake," she snapped. "Is it?" I said, holding up the printed records. "Because it looks like you just tried to sneak back into this neighborhood after getting banned from HOA leadership permanently." The entire room turned on her. Linda stood up. "Is this true?" she demanded. Karen opened and closed her mouth, but it was too late. The jig was up. She had been exposed. Again. The HOA board immediately held a vote. Karen was banned from any community meetings. Any attempt to start a new HOA movement? Shut down. And then, her real estate deal fell through. With her real identity exposed, the home seller backed out. Karen's purchase was canceled. And just like that, she lost everything. Again, she stormed out of the meeting, furious, shouting about how she would sue us all. But we weren't worried, because this time, we had buried her for good. A month later, Karen officially left town. For real this time. No more fake names. No more sneaky schemes. No more HOA takeovers. Brookhaven flourished. And me? I sat on my porch one last time, beer in hand, watching the sunset. My brother pulled up. "Tell me she's actually gone this time." I grinned. "Oh yeah, this time she's done." We clinked bottles. Brookhaven was finally safe. And Karen? She learned the hardest lesson of all. No matter how many times she tried, messing with me always ended the same way. She lost. For the first time in years, Brookhaven was truly free. No Karen. No secret HOA coups. No shady power grabs. Life in the neighborhood was better than ever. People actually enjoyed their homes instead of worrying about petty fines and fake violations. For the first time since moving in, I thought, this is how it was always supposed to be. I finally let my guard down. But as I learned the hard way, trouble in Brookhaven never really disappears. One morning, I was sitting on my porch, drinking coffee, when I saw a moving truck pull up. A new family was moving into the house Karen had tried to buy under a fake name. I watched as a middle-aged couple stepped out, smiling and chatting with the movers. At first, I felt relieved. Finally, a normal family, I thought. But then, a third person stepped out of the car. A younger woman, probably in her early 30s. She was tall, with blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. She was dressed in business casual, clipboard in hand, already taking notes on the houses around her. My stomach dropped. Oh no, not another one. I decided to introduce myself before anything weird happened. I walked over as the couple was unloading boxes. "Hey there, welcome to Brookhaven. My name." The husband smiled. "Nice to meet you. I'm Rick, this is my wife, Susan. And this is our daughter, Lauren." Lauren, the woman with the clipboard. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Pleasure," she said. But the way she looked at me, it was the same look Karen used to give me. That calculating, assessing stare. Like she was already thinking 5 moves ahead. Like she was already planning something. And right then, I knew. The Karen era might be over. But something new was coming. Something worse. Over the next few weeks, I kept an eye on Lauren. And the more I watched, the more alarmed I became. She walked the neighborhood every morning, taking notes on people's houses. She asked strange questions to neighbors about HOA rules and neighborhood standards. And then, the real red flag. I saw her talking to Sandra Miller. Sandra, the only person who had supported Karen's crazy HOA rules. They stood in Sandra's yard for almost an hour, chatting like old friends. And that's when it clicked. Lauren wasn't just some random new neighbor. She was here for a reason. She was here to finish what Karen started. One day, Linda showed up at my house. "You are not gonna believe what I just heard," she said, looking pissed. "Try me." She handed me a flyer. "Community interest meeting. Let's discuss the future of Brookhaven. Join us for a conversation about keeping our neighborhood beautiful, organized, and strong." Hosted by Lauren Carter and Sandra Miller. My jaw clenched. She's trying to start a new HOA. Linda nodded. Karen might be gone, but her legacy isn't. I exhaled slowly. "All right," I said. "Then we do this the same way we always have. Expose them before they even get started." I did some digging on Lauren. And what I found confirmed my worst suspicions. She was a former HOA attorney. She specialized in community restructuring. She had ties to Karen. Specifically, Karen had hired her as a legal consultant 2 years ago. This wasn't just a coincidence. Lauren had come to Brookhaven with a mission. And at the meeting, I was going to shut it down before it even started. The meeting was held at the same clubhouse where I had exposed Karen before. The room was packed. Lauren stood at the front, confident and poised, with Sandra grinning beside her. "Good evening, everyone," Lauren said, her voice smooth and rehearsed. "I wanted to invite you all here to discuss revitalizing our community. Brookhaven has been wonderful, but we believe there's room for improvement." I raised my hand. "Define improvement." Lauren smiled. "Simple," she said. "We want to bring back a formal set of guidelines to help maintain order and property values." Order, property values. The same bull *** Karen used to say. I stood up. "You mean an HOA?" The room murmured. Lauren kept smiling. "Not exactly," she said. "More like a community advisory board." I laughed. "So, an HOA without the name?" Lauren's smile tightened. "It would be nothing like the old HOA," she insisted. "Oh, really?" I said, pulling out my research folder. "Because it turns out you used to work for HOAs. And not just any HOA, Karen's." Gasps. Sandra's smile vanished. Lauren's face stayed neutral, but I could tell. She was rattled. I flipped through the files, showing proof of her connection to Karen. "Tell me, Lauren," I said. "If you had no connection to Karen, why did she hire you 2 years ago?" The room erupted in whispers. Lauren tried to salvage it. "That was a long time ago," she said. "This is different." "Is it?" I interrupted. "Because everything you're proposing sounds exactly the same." The meeting fell apart. People started standing up, demanding answers. Lauren and Sandra lost control of the room. And just like that, their HOA resurrection plan crumbled. The next day, Sandra moved out of Brookhaven. Lauren? She stayed a few more months. But after she failed to build her fake HOA, she quietly sold her house and left town. For good. Karen's legacy was finally dead. And Brookhaven was finally, truly free. One evening, my brother stopped by. "No more Karens, right?" he asked. I smirked. "Not this time." He raised his beer. "To a Karen-free world." We clinked bottles. And as the sun set over Brookhaven, I knew. The war was finally over. Brookhaven was finally at peace. Karen was gone. Her HOA dictatorship was destroyed. Her failed resurrection plan was exposed. And for the first time since moving in, I could live my life without looking over my shoulder. No more fake fines. No more anonymous complaints. No more clipboard-wielding tyrants trying to control everything. I had one, and this time, it was permanent. With no HOA power struggles to deal with, the neighborhood thrived. People actually talked to each other instead of living in fear of the next fine. Block parties returned. Kids played in the streets without someone calling them a disturbance. And, most importantly, we were free. Linda and the remaining HOA board members ensured that no one like Karen would ever rise again. Brookhaven would never go back to the way it was before. And that was the best victory of all. One day, months later, I was out mowing my lawn when I noticed something in the mailbox. It was a letter with no return address. For a split second, I thought, oh hell, not again. But when I opened it, it was a postcard. And on the front, a picture of a cheap condo in Florida. On the back, in messy handwriting, was a single sentence. You may have won, but I'll always be watching. Okay? I laughed out loud. Karen might still be bitter. But it didn't matter. Because Brookhaven wasn't hers anymore. It was ours. And no matter where she was, no matter what she tried, she had lost. Forever.